I'm sure if you've been reading or watching the news, you would have heard about what is going on in the Democratic Republic of Congo. But if you haven't, that's okay. I'm going to give you a very quick summary. The M23 or March 23 movement is a Tutsi-led rebel group that has been gaining ground in North Kivu, particularly around Goma. Goma is a city within North Kivu. Goma is actually the provincial capital city of North Kivu. This city is strategically important due to its location near the border of Rwanda and its proximity to major transport and trade routes. M23 has captured several towns around Goma and now controls significant parts of the city. Goma is home to the bases of both MONUSCO and SAMIDRC, which I'll talk about more later, so don't worry if you don't know. Things get a bit tense because Rwanda is accused of backing the M23 rebels, which they definitely do. The rebels have been receiving support in terms of arms and training, which makes them pretty much a proper army with tech and infantry and everything. Because of Rwanda's involvement, the M23 resurgence has led to tension between DRC and Rwanda, with the DRC accusing Rwanda of destabilizing its eastern region and supporting the rebels. So that's what's happening. A rebel insurgence and tension between DRC and Rwanda. My big question is, why is South Africa there? I'm going to tell you why South Africa is there according to the facts, but I don't really think they should be there, especially considering South Africa, our own country's financial issues and government problems. The reason South Africa has involved itself in this conflict in the DRC is because they are a member of SADC or SADC, which is the Southern African Development Community. And because they're a member of this, they have a commitment to support other member nations within the region, of which DRC is a member state. South Africa has kind of positioned themselves as a regional leader in Africa's diplomacy. And I guess this peacekeeping mission in the DRC enhances its standing within international organizations such as the United Nations and the African Union. I don't necessarily think South Africa should be considered regional leaders, but that's where we are right now. South Africa also has vested economic and trade interests. Stability in the DRC could potentially create a more favorable environment for trade and economic cooperation between the two countries. The DRC is extremely rich, especially in the North region, in natural resources, which are of strategic interest to South Africa's mining sector, among others. So that's the basics. Let's go into the details. South Africa's soldiers are there in two complements, SAMIDRC and MONUSCO. So what are these things? SAMIDRC is a Southern African Development Community's mission in the DRC, SAMIDRC, which was deployed on December 15th, 2023 to assist the DRC government in restoring peace and security in the volatile eastern region. This region has seen increased conflict due to the resurgence of armed groups like M23. South Africa plays a big role in the Southern African Development Community, and part of that role is to ensure stability in the region. So I guess the DRC's instability has spillover effects into other countries, especially regarding the movement of refugees, arms, and armed groups. South Africa's involvement aims to contribute to regional peace and security. South Africa also has close diplomatic and military relations with the DRC. In the past, South Africa has supported efforts to broker peace deals in the DRC, and its military involvement is a continuation of that commitment. So South Africa is trying to support regional security to do peacekeeping as well as humanitarian efforts. I just don't know how they can justify the costs and benefits of maintaining troops in the DRC, especially with the complexity of the situation on the ground as it is, as well as the lack of resources that the SANDF has. For SAMIDRC, South Africa committed 2,900 troops to the mission at a cost of 2.4 billion per year. That's our taxpayers' money. By May 2024, only 1,000 troops had actually been deployed, and reports suggest that there are extremely inadequate conditions for the SAMIDRC personnel on the ground. Personally, I think the deployment is an extreme strain on South Africa's military resources, as it essentially commits 22.5% of our army capacity to this region in the north of Africa. This all while our own borders are being breached by the minute. So that's SAMIDRC, and then we also have MONUSCO, which is the UN's peacekeeping mission in the DRC, which South Africa is part of. This mission was established to help stabilize the DRC following years of conflict, including the Second Congo War, which took place between 1998 and 2003. The UN's goal is to protect civilians, supporting the government, and facilitating peace. South Africa, being a part of African peacekeeping as well as a member of the UN Security Council, obviously has to contribute troops to support this mission. So that's the two groups. Now we get to what happened in the last few weeks. Between January 25 to 27 this year, a series of deadly confrontations occurred when M23 forces launched attacks on positions held by SAMIDRC, including these South African troops near Goma. 9 South African soldiers were killed during an attempt to stop the rebels from capturing Goma. And then on the 27th of January, the situation got even worse as an exchange of mortar fire between M23 and the DRC army, FARDC, near Goma airport resulted in the deaths of 3 more South African soldiers. Additionally, one of the soldiers who had been injured during fights on previous days succumbed to his wounds, bringing the total death toll for South African soldiers to 13. And I really do think these deaths could have been prevented. South Africa is in no state to fight other people's fights, considering our extreme lack of military capabilities. Like, where were the Rooivalk helicopters? How can a government send their troops across the continent without any support? There are even reports of soldiers having the wrong ammunition for the weapons they use. Like, that's absolutely crazy to me. That's just wrong. I think these questions have to be asked. Are there other motivations behind SANDF being in that region? As we know, that area has abundant mineral resources. I guess SAMIDRC's failure to meet its objectives is becoming clear, especially after the M23 took control of Goma. I think South Africa's involvement in this is kind of futile, and most military experts point out that South African forces were not prepared for this conflict. Our military just has insufficient force multipliers like drones, artillery, and attack helicopters, which would have led to preventing deaths of South African soldiers. South Africa is deploying troops abroad while facing such serious internal crises such as rising crime, corruption, and deteriorating infrastructure. This raises the question of why resources are spent on overseas conflicts when the country's borders are insecure and basic services are collapsing. Now, this is a very current story, but as of me filming today, we're waiting to hear if the SAMIDRC, which includes SANDF, will be withdrawn from the region, which I really think they should be. I guess the problem is the damage to our reputation has already been done. We've been proven to be inadequate, and I guess I just hope it just doesn't come back to bite us in the future. The SADC mission was meant to bolster peace efforts in the DRC, but I guess it has failed to make substantial impact. As these M23 soldiers solidify control over strategic areas, South African forces are increasingly becoming isolated, and their situation in Goma is becoming more and more precarious and dire. I think this conflict could mark the end of South Africa's role as a regional peacekeeper and also lead to a re-evaluation of its military commitments in Africa as a whole. As you've probably seen from some of my other videos, South Africa's military capability is in decline, and its role in regional conflicts is no longer sustainable in the long term. South Africa really shouldn't have been in the DRC in the first place. I think the best thing to do would be to get our troops out as unscathed as possible, and then mourn our losses and move forward, focusing on our country first. And maybe one day, if the day ever comes, where we are in a better place ourselves, we can help the rest of our continental neighbors. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it. Please pop your thoughts in the comments below. I also wanted to say thank you for 2,000 subscribers. It's really cool and it really helps. So if you haven't already, just click the subscribe button. It's just below, it doesn't take long. One click from you helps me a lot. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.